Again, the standard color space for a new document inside of Illustrator is CMYK, or the printing colors. So if I just go into File, New inside of Illustrator, you'll see there's some profiles here. In those profiles, you'll notice you have Print, you have Web, you have Devices, you have Film and Video, and you have Basic RGB. Okay, you want to use either Basic RGB or maybe Device. If you click on Device, you'll notice this is not giving you an icon size for that device. It's giving you the dimensions of what the window size is for that dimension. So that's really not going to help you at this point. It's just giving you the pixels, right? If it's an iPad mini, it's 768 by 124. That's the actual square dimension, so that if you were building an interface for that. That is not really important to me right now. What's really important to me, though, is instead of using the print option, I want you to use the RGB color space. The RGB color space right there. And then let's not worry about size at this point. So again, if you want to change to RGB too, you can always go underneath Advanced right here, and you can change the color space right here. CMYK, RGB. If you're doing things for print, or not for print, for cell phones or for the internet, I would use RGB. When I'm done, I'm going to hit OK. So again, let's make the pear icon like I drew on the board. I'm going to draw myself a pear shape. Using the pen tool. Ooh, that's a pretty ugly pear shape, isn't it? Remember, after you draw a shape, you can always manipulate it using the points. There we go. That's more of a pear. Pear that's crooked. There we go. So again, I'm just making an icon. I'm making a pear icon. It looks like a pear. And there we go. Or an egg. Look, it's an egg shape. And I might give it a pear color, since we're doing fruit. And no stroke. So if I wanted to add a stem to this and a bite taken out of it, how could I do that? Well, in this case, the bite taking out of it is I would use a oval or a ellipse, and I would think about where the bite would be, and I'm going to draw it over top of it, kind of like the Apple logo, right? So again, I have one shape over top of another, and I'm going to use this shape to cut a space out of this shape. And that's primarily what you use the Pathfinder for, to use one object to cut the shape out of another object. So to do that, I'm going to move it down just a little bit. To do that cutting action like the Apple icon here, I'm going to do that by selecting both objects, and then I'm going to go to the Pathfinder feature. Pathfinder. In the Pathfinder option is where you can make more than one object. We're going to use this a lot in class. So let's just go over this one. We'll combine the objects together. Unite. We'll combine two objects. This one says minus front. This one says where they intersect, keep that. So where they overlap, it will keep this area right here. This one will say exclude. It'll exclude overlapping shape area. Kind of like this one, I guess. And then this one's divide, if you want to take these and split them up into multiple objects. This one's trim, kind of like the divide. Merge, we'll combine them together, almost like the shape, this one, unite. And then crop, and outline, and minus back. So since we drew the circle after we drew the pear shape, I'm going to do minus front. So what minus front will do is we'll take that second shape I made, and we'll use that to cut a hole in the one underneath it. So I click on it, you'll see it gives me my bite. Again, since the circle was over top of the pear shape, it then used that shape to cut the hole into the other one. Next, I'm going to make a stem. It's my apple, my pear with a bite. I'm going to make a stem just using, you can use maybe the pencil tool. And I'm going to draw, oosh, no, not that. Let me draw a stem. There we go. Let me do again. I'm going to kind of make a little cut. There we go. So there's a little stem at the top of my fruit here. The problem, though, again, is that this is a separate object than this one, which is okay. I mean, it looks like it's there. You can leave it like there if you're saving it as a JPEG, or if you're saving it as a PNG or something like that. But for things like I was talking about before, the icon font, you wouldn't be able to save this. When you make an icon font, it has to be one shape only. It can't be multiple shapes. So how can I combine these together? Well, again, I could select both of them. And this one, Unite, will bring them together. If you hit the Unite, it'll actually make it one object. And it takes this one and combines them together. And now they're seen as one object.
What is the difference between group and Pathfinder?
Which one?
Group, you go to
grouping.
Grouping will just, it sort of links the files together, but they're still separate objects. Right? If I make a circle and then I make a triangle, right? And then they're two separate objects right now, but if I group them together, they're still two separate objects. They're just selected together as a team, but they're not together like these. This is one object now. One object. Okay, so let's make it 3D. This is a great looking icon. This would be perfect for my my restaurant. Chef Ramsay would use this on his menu. Doesn't. Okay. But wouldn't it be better if it was actually in 3D and had some extruding? So we're going to be talking about some 3D tools in the next week also. One of the ones that we use to sort of make this look 3D is one called Extrude. And so how Extrude works is it takes the flat object and kind of pulls it away. Okay, pulls it away. And so to make this look kind of 3D, so it's a little bit more interesting than a boring two-dimensional shape here, I can go underneath where it says Effects, 3D, and the one I want to use is Extrude and Bevel. Extrude and Bevel. And if I click on that, it should bring up the extrude option. How extrude works is this is the option. Again, this is underneath Effects, 3D. If you hit preview, you'll see what it does. It gives you kind of a 3D kind of look to it. It's like pulling it away. So it takes the face and kind of pulls it apart. Okay, we're extruding it. And so you can control the angle of the 3D. So you can make it look really 3D like that if you want. There we go, really 3D. If you want it to be a little bit deeper, you can change the depth so it makes it bigger like that or less. The bevel part is the edge where the facets come together. Do you want it to be smooth transition between them, or do you want it to be kind of, if you look at it now, it's like an angle, 90-degree angle where the things come together. But a bevel is kind of the edge. You know, beveling is the edge of where two facets, and so you can give it a kind of a smooth edge if you want, so the edges aren't butted right up against each other. In addition to that kind of, I don't like the bevel for this right now, but I'm just pointing it out. So that makes a nice icon, kind of a 3D look to it, so it's not sort of flat and boring. It's a little bit too much 3D for me. There we go. There we go. Somewhat 3D. There's different ways of shading. You can make it a wireframe looking, no shading, diffuse shading, and plastic shading gives you kind of a shiny look. When you get it the way you want it to look using this, again, you can rotate it here any way that you want. Get it the way that you want it to look. You can hit OK, and your object now kind of looks 3D a little bit, and it looks like it's coming off the background a little bit, right? So a common icon size is 512 by 512. So how can I save this beautiful bitten apple pear thing as 512 by 512 pixels? That's a common size for your iPhone 6. Okay, 512 by 512 pixels is a common size. So how can I save this 512 by? Well, in this case, you'll see that you have the Artboard tool, which is in the lower left corner. I'm going to take the Artboard tool and I'm going to double click on it. When I double click on the Artboard tool, it gives me an option that pops up, and that option is how big to make the artboard. Inside there I can actually type in width and height. I can type in 512 by 512 to make it the correct size. Again, how did I get to this window? I double clicked on the Artboard tool. Once I got the artboard up, I typed in 512 by 512 and I hit OK. Now that artboard is 512 by, so when I save this as a JPEG or PNG or SVG, this wouldn't be very good at SVG because it has the 3D extrude. So I might fill it so I can grab my object and scale it. Right? You might want to scale it so it fits. Not all icons fit the whole thing though, so keep that in mind. You might give your icon a background color if you want. How could I give it a background? I just make a rectangle that's the same size and put it all the way in the back and change the color. How about that? Wouldn't this apple be nice on maybe, let's make a rectangle or square in this case because this is square, and give it a color and then send it all the way to the back. There we go. Hey. A little yellow. How about a little pink? Whoosh. Oh. There we go. I don't know. Whatever. So it has a little icon. Now, keep in mind, if you were going to save an icon for Apple, if you look at your phone, if you have an Apple phone, if you look at your phone, you'll notice that the icons all have kind of round edges to them. That round edge effect that you see on the Apple is part of the iOS. And so when you submit an icon to Apple to be on the phone, you actually send them a square, and then they do the edges. So be careful of what you put on the edge, okay, because it's going to round the edges of it. If you look at the phone, it has round icons. Round icons. So just be aware of that. They put the round on there. It's part of the iOS. But let's save it. Of course, I could save either JPEG, PNG. The advantage of the PNG, let's just talk about that for a moment. Now I know I put a square in the background, gave it some nice color. So if I save this, it will work fine as JPEG. So to save this as a JPEG, I can go underneath File, Save As, or actually Save for Web, or Export. So to save as JPEG, you can save either under Save for Web or even under there's something called Export. If you hit Save As, it doesn't give you the JPEG option there. If you go to Save As, you'll see you get these. You get SVG, Adobe PDF, you get template, ESP, and Illustrator. So you don't have JPEG. You're like, where's the JPEG? Well, to save as JPEG in Illustrator, you can go under File, Export, and you have PNG, BMP, CSS, and all these other ones. Oh, there's no JPEG in there. Oh yeah, there's JPEG right there. Okay, so we'll talk briefly, especially next week, about more formats. But for right now, if I just save as JPEG, I can give it a name. Pear icon 512. And of course, JPEG is a compressed file, so it's going to ask you to give it a compression scheme. Of course, larger file will be a bigger file, but better quality, lower quality. So it depends on what you're trying to do. Something like this could probably be just fine at medium quality. If I save it as a PNG, go under File, Export, let's save it as a PNG. Wasn't there a PNG? Oh, there it is, first option. I can call it pair icon 512. I can give it the same name, but it's a different format. If I didn't have the rectangle behind it and you wanted to save with an alpha channel, so those of you who are probably in Photoshop class or whatever in design class, you probably learned about alpha channel, right? What is the alpha? What's an alpha channel? Anybody know? Let's look at a file. 24-bit file has 8 bits of red, 8 bits of blue, and then 8 bits of green, RGB, RBG, whatever, so on. But you can also have attached to that a 32-bit file. There's a 32-bit file. Well, a 32-bit file in the computer has an extra channel that is 8 bits of alpha. What an alpha is a transparent layer that can be attached to a 24-bit image. So in this case, if I wanted to have this with a transparent back here, I would take this pair and put it somewhere where you don't see this outside here, and it could be floating somewhere. Okay, I could tell the background to be transparent. Okay, that is called an alpha channel. Okay, so if I delete this right now, let's delete the rectangle here. Notice it's a white background. If I save this as a PNG right now, if I go underneath File, Export, and I choose PNG right here, and I call it pair with transparent, P-A-R-E-N-T, transparent. So if I export it now, you'll notice there is a transparent option right here. And notice it has the checkerboard pattern like you would see in Photoshop, right? Okay, so that is then saying, hey, this is going to be transparent behind there. And if you go and put this somewhere, if I put it in a video editing application, that pair could be floating over top of the video, right? You put it on a web page, that outside's all transparent, you just see the pair itself. I bring it into Photoshop, it's transparent. I bring it into InDesign, transparent. So you can have this transparent layer that's attached to your file that you can use. And the reason why it's 24-bit though, or 8-bit here, is you can actually have transparencies that are soft, right? If you work inside Photoshop, you have something called feather that makes the edges nice and soft and smooth, right? Feather edge, smooth edges, anti-aliasing. It's called anti-aliasing. So you can actually have the objects blended to a smooth gradient on the edge. This is hard edge, so it doesn't really matter. And if I hit OK here, it will then save it. And then again, like I said, we could put it anywhere you want, and it'll have a transparent option. So think about that, and I'm going to stop talking. You can spend the next 40 minutes working on your project.